Good day, everyone. My name is Njoki Chijoki Philip, and in this presentation, I'll be discussing the Fair Information Practice Principles, commonly known as FIPPS, and their importance for privacy and cybersecurity. FIPPS provides a framework for thinking about how organizations should responsibly collect, use, maintain, and protect personal information. They are particularly relevant to cybersecurity because protecting personally identifiable information, or PPI, involves more than preventing unauthorized access. It also requires organizations to consider what information they collect, why they collect it, how they use it, and whether they can demonstrate responsible handling over that information. I will first explain the 9 FIPP areas identified in this assessment, then compare FIPPs with privacy laws and regulations, and finally demonstrate how a federal agency could apply each principle to protect PII. Understanding the FIPPs, the first principle is transparency. Transparency means being open about how personal information is collected, used, maintained, and shared. For example, a federal agency collecting information from citizens should clearly explain what information it requires, why it is needed, and how it will be handled. Transparency also involves to making informed decisions and understand what is happening to their information. The second principle is individual participation. Individuals should have appropriate communities opportunities to participate in decisions concerning their personal information. Depending on the circumstances, this may include accessing their record, requesting correction, or raising concerns about how their information is being handled. These principles is important because individuals should not completely lose control over information simply because an organization has collected it. The third principle is purpose specification. An organization should identify the purpose for collecting personal information. For example, if an agency collects financial information to determine eligibility for government benefit, that purpose should be established before the information is collected. This helps prevent organizations from collecting information without a clear reason. The fourth principle is data minimization. This means collecting only the information that is relevant and necessary for identified purpose. From a cybersecurity perspective, this is particularly valuable because unnecessary information creates additional exposure. If an organization does not collect or retain information that it does not need, that information can not later be compromised in a breach. The fifth principle is limitation. The use of limitation. Personal information use not simply be reused or disclosed for unrelated purposes because an organization already possesses it. Its use should remain constant with original purpose or have another appropriate legal or authorized basis. This limits the possibility of personal information gradually being used beyond what was originally intended. The sixth principle is data quality and integrity. Personal information should be accurate, relevant, complete, and sufficiently up to date. Poor quality data can create serious consequences. For example, an inaccurate government record could result in an individual receiving an incorrect decision or being denied a service for which they are eligible. Privacy, therefore, involves protecting not only the confidentiality of information but also the reliability. The seventh principle is security. Organizations should implement appropriate administrative, technical, and physical safeguards to protect PII from unauthorized access, disclosure, alteration, loss, or destruction for cyber security professionals. This could involve encryption, multi-factor authentication, access control, network monitoring, secure configuration, vulnerability management, and incident response. NIST's privacy framework similarly emphasizes managing privacy risks alongside cybersecurity risks rather than treating privacy and security as completely separate concerns. The eight principles accountability. Accountability means an organization accepts responsibility for its privacy practices and can demonstrate that it's meeting capable requirements. This involves assigning responsibilities, training employees, documenting procedures, and monitoring compliance. The ninth principle is auditing. Auditing, auditing allows an organization to determine whether its privacy policies and controls are actually working. This could involve reviewing access logs, examining data handling procedures, testing controls, and investigating unusual activity. For cybersecurity students, this is important because a policy has limited value if an organization never checks whether employees and systems are following it. FIPPS compared with privacy laws and regulation. It is important to recognize that FIPPS are not a single comprehensive privacy law. They provide principles that can guide responsible information practices, whereas specific laws and regulations create enforceable legal requirements. For example, the U.S. Privacy Act of 1974 establishes requirements for federal agencies concerning records containing information about individuals. FIPPS can therefore provide a broader conceptual foundation for privacy management, while the Privacy Act establishes specific statutory obligations for federal agencies. FIPPS can also be compared with General Data Protection Regulation or GDPR. There are clear similarities between them. Purpose specification is closely related to the GDPR principle of purpose limitation, while data minimization responds to GDPR's requirements that personal data be adequate, relevant, and limited to what is necessary. Transparency, accuracy, security, and accountability are also reflected within the GDPR framework. However, FIPPS should not be confused with GDPR. FIPPS are principles, whereas GDPR is a comprehensive legal regulation containing specific obligations, individual rights, enforcement mechanisms. The distinction is important for cybersecurity professionals because following the general privacy principle does not automatically mean that an organization has established every legal requirement that applies to it. Protecting PII through the FIPPS are useful because they address PPI throughout the life cycle, beginning with collection and continuing through storage, use, sharing, protection, review, and disposal. For example, transparency helps individuals understand how their information is being handled. Purpose specification and data minimization reduce unnecessary collection. Use limitation restricts inappropriate secondary uses. Data quality helps maintain reliable information, while security protects it against unauthorized access and other threats. Individual participation provides appropriate opportunities for individuals to review or challenge information, while accountability and auditing help an organization demonstrate that its privacy practices are functioning as intended. According to NIST's privacy risk management involves identifying and managing risk individuals that can arise from processing of personal information. This reinforces the idea that privacy should be considered throughout the information life cycle rather than only after a security incident occurs. After each FIPP in a federal agency. To put this principle into practice, consider a federal agency responsible for administering public benefits such an agency may handle names, addresses, social security numbers, financial information, and eligibility records. The agency could apply transparency by providing clear privacy notices explaining what information it collects and how it will be used. Individuals' participation could be supported through procedures that allows individuals to access appropriate records and request corrections. For purpose specification, the agency could establish that information is being collected for defined activities such as determining eligibility and administering benefit. Data minimization will require it to collect only information necessary for those activities. Through use limitation, information collected for benefit administration would not be casually reused for unrelated purposes. Data quality and integrity could be maintained through validation processes, regular updates, and procedures for correcting inaccurate records. For security, the agency could use multi-factor authentication, role-based access control, encryption, continuous monitoring, and incident response procedures. From a cybersecurity perspective, these controls help reduce the likelihood and potential impact of unauthorized access. Accountability could be implemented by assigning clear privacy responsibilities, training employees, and documenting compliance activities. Finally, auditing could involve regularly reviewing access logs, privacy controls, and data handling procedures to determine whether the agency is following its established requirements. This example shows that FIPPS are not simply theoretical principles. They can influence how federal agency designs its systems, manages information, trains its employees, and monitors its privacy practices. In conclusion, the Fair Information Practice Principles provide a practical foundation for responsible privacy management. They encourage organizations to be transparent, involve individuals, establish clear purposes, minimize unnecessary information, limit its use, maintain data quality, protect information through appropriate security, accept accountability, and regularly audit their practices. For example, for cybersecurity professionals, one of the most important lessons is that protecting PII begins before information enters a system and continues throughout its entire life cycle. Technical security controls are essential, but they are only part of responsible information management. An organization must also ask whether it should collect the information, why it needs it, how it will use it, who should have access to it, and whether it can demonstrate that it is handling it appropriately. When federal agencies apply FIPPS consistently, they can reduce privacy risks, strengthen their cybersecurity and accountability practices, and build greater public confidence in the way personal information is managed. Thank you for listening.